Do you have the time to listen to me whine?
Hello everyone! So welcome to this week's video, and I am starting a new series, I guess you could call it, for adolescence literature. This is actually a project for one of my courses in college at CSU, so I thought I would start this project by going easy with the Twilight saga. So let's get started. Start out with basically what is adolescence. So this whole course I'm taking is basically about the adolescents in society, I guess, and the books or literature, whatever that they read and take part of. And it's really geared towards us English teachers, like going to be an English teacher. So basically, it's important really to understand why adolescence is so important if you're going to be a teacher. And so basically, I guess to understand why it's important, we have to understand what it is. So in a nutshell, adolescence is basically between 12 and 18 years old. It's the process when you start kind of separating yourself from your parents a little bit and you start becoming your own person. So during this time, you have a lot of behavioral changes, like you'll have things that go on through your head, like self-conscious issues, like am I as pretty as so-and-so, or for a boy, like, or am I as strong as the quarterback, or whatever it may be. So during this time, often adolescents are really preoccupied with themselves. And as a teen, when I was a teen, I can definitely testify to that. Like, I was so concerned, like, you know what, oh, I'm not as pretty as the cheerleaders. And I really had like this hatred towards the cheerleaders at my school because I didn't look like them. Like, I didn't even know them, but I didn't look like them, so I automatically didn't like them. So with these changes that are going on in your mind and physically and emotionally, mentally, whatever, it's not, you don't always go through things the same way as you will with your friends. So say like your friends are like, oh yeah, happy-go-lucky, whatever, and you're like super depressed and angry, and you know you're in the angsty team or like your Green Day time, like I was. That's totally fine. It's like it's all just towards the individual person, how they deal with their adolescence and stuff, and it's not something you can really choose, and it's always a hard time for you and your parents. I know with my own family, we fought a lot because I was trying to figure out who I was, and my parents were still like molding me to be what was appropriate for me to be. And so a lot of teens go through that. Adolescence is definitely not like how you see on TV. Like, I just don't think anyone grows up that way. So I think it's important that we look at why do they do that? Like, why do they put on TV like, oh, when you're a teenager, like your high school years are the best you'll ever have. And maybe they are for you, but for me, that was not the case. And that's why I had books, because without books, I don't know how I would have gotten through it. I always say I'm a literature snob. So in high school, I read a lot of books like Twilight or, you know, vampire, like genre-geared books, like stories that were based on the genre, like they were genre-driven instead of character-driven. So like a good example of that would be like Charles Dickens' Great Expectations. That story is moved by the main characters growing up and figuring out who he is, which is also a really good adolescent lit book for a different video. But and then like genre fiction is like the story itself moves the story. So like with something like with Twilight, the story of a vampire and a human falling in love, that's what moves the story. It's not any really big character growth or character differences that we see necessarily from the beginning to the end with either Bella, Edward, or whatever. So that's why it's kind of more genre-based instead of literature-based, in my opinion. But, I mean, it's everybody's personal opinion. So with that in mind, I guess we can put the two together and make adolescence literature, which is probably more commonly known as the YA novels, or young adult. Now, these are mostly stories written about the changes that you are going through as a teenager. So, like with Twilight, Bella's 17, I think, when she starts, and then she's married and has a baby by the end of it. That is, like, the whole adolescence time. Like, she is angsty with her mom because, you know, she decided to marry Phil and X, Y, and Z, and then she moves to Forks, and she's angsty with her dad because he doesn't seem to get her, and she's, like, the not popular kid in class, and everybody, like, loves her from the very beginning, so that causes her anxiety. Like, everything she's known to be true when she was living in Phoenix is suddenly, like, just thrown out the window, and she has this whole new world exposed to her where the new kid is suddenly cool and she's suddenly cool, even though she's like, no, I trip upstairs, I'm not special, I'm not pretty, I'm not X, Y, and Z. So adolescence literature can even be something like The Light Between the Oceans. It's just anything that an adolescent, like a teenager, will read and enjoy and get something out of. And then we kind of look at why it's important for adolescents to actually read and get something out of the literature they're picking up and looking at. So when I was a teenager, I spent a majority of my high school years reading vampire novels and romance and stuff like that, like everyone in that time. So I thought I'd start this video with something really easy for me to talk about, which is Twilight. Now, Twilight gets a lot of bad rap for being cheesy or being terribly written or X, Y, Z reasons, and it gets a lot of rap about the movies and stuff, but I'm here to talk about the book and just the book and not the movies, because that's a whole different story I could spend hours talking about. So, basically, Twilight, if you don't know, is a girl going to live with her dad, and she falls in love with this vampire. And what I really like about this as an adolescent's literature point of view is that it's not damsel in distress fairy tale. It's more human in distress. And to prove that, Stephanie Meyer actually wrote Life and Death, which is Twilight and Edward's point of view. Scratch that. It is Twilight in a boy's point of view. So Bella is now Beau and Edward is now Edith. And the reason why Stephanie Meyer had done that is because she wanted to prove that if the story was told in a male point of view, the outcome of the story would still be the same. And she's absolutely correct. Like, if you haven't read it, read it, because it's amazing how just switching the gender in the story makes no difference. Which is also kind of important to understand, especially as a teenager, if you're questioning who you are and who you're supposed to be and stuff. I think this really helps you decide, like, you know what, it doesn't matter at the end of the day what I am, as long as I am who I am and I'm happy. So I just think with the Twilight saga in itself, I think it's more of a journey of human dealing with the supernatural elements. Now, it's important, I would say, for adolescents to take a look at books like Twilight, New Moon, whatever, and look at them in a different point of view, because one, it's going to be a different reality for them. So if they're dealing with terrible things that are happening at home, or they're not doing so well in school, like with me, I wasn't the most popular kid, and I didn't have a lot of friends. But I didn't care, because I had Twilight in my backpack, and my whole world lived in there. And every time I had a second, I would pull it out and I would read. And even if I'd read it 5 times, I was somehow still that human dealing with the scariness of the supernatural. So the reason I actually chose to do a project like this for my adolescence literature class is because I wanted to look back as an adolescent and maybe talk to those who are not also in my class. Like, they can listen, obviously, but kind of like looking at the younger audience here, just saying, like, things may be bad, but you're always going to have a good story to back you up. So why I chose Twilight to talk about first is because, like I said, it was my whole world. And no matter what, I loved it. I mean, I was one of those fangirls who wrote fan fiction, I drew pictures of them, I did everything. And I think it's important to understand that you're not alone out there. Like, if you have something cheesy, a cheesy romance like Twilight, who cares? Like, you read what you want to read, and it's important to understand, like, nobody can tell you what you can and cannot think. And I think that's exactly why Stephanie Meyer chose to write Twilight in a male point of view for her 10-year anniversary, because it's important to understand, like, it doesn't matter what everyone else thinks. This is your story, this is your life, this is your mind. Alright, so I guess that's everything I want to talk about for this first video. Thanks everybody for watching, and subscribe, like, comment, whatever you want to do if you want to see more of this series or more from my channel. Thanks guys, bye!